Millionaire let Mistress slap pregnant wife at dinner, then asked her to apologize. A lavish dinner at the newly reopened Harrington Hall Hotel in downtown London was meant to be a triumphant display of wealth and prestige. Instead, it became the scene of an unthinkable betrayal. An affluent businessman allowed his mistress to strike his pregnant wife in front of horrified onlookers, and then demanded that his wife apologize for the drama. Whispers of scandal raced across the city, mixing pity with morbid curiosity. What kind of man would sanction such cruelty? What desperation would drive a mistress to violence? And most hauntingly, why did the pregnant wife, who carried new life within her, remain silent? Alexander Harrington was a name whispered with reverence in the corridors of power. At 36, his name was etched into the rosters of Forbes' 30 Under 30 list years ago. People spoke of him as a financial prodigy, a genius with an uncanny ability to turn every venture into gold. But behind the immaculate suits and carefully rehearsed PR interviews, there was a man driven by desperation, insecurities, and an unquenchable thirst for more money, more fame, more love, and above all, more control. Alexander was the third son of Gregory Harrington, the founder of Harrington Global Holdings. Gregory was known for his sharp business acumen and had played a part in launching multiple successful ventures with high-profile partners. Rumor once held that even Elon Musk had considered investing in one of Gregory's up-and-coming tech subsidiaries. As patriarch of the Harrington family, Gregory never failed to remind Alexander that no matter how high he soared, he still had to answer to the family legacy. Catherine Harrington, née Macmillan, was Alexander's wife of 5 years. At 29, she was a well-educated, graceful woman who held her own philanthropic interests. She had once dreamed of setting up a children's art therapy center in impoverished neighborhoods. But after marrying Alexander, her ambitions were overshadowed by social obligations and the demands of her husband's business. She was now 7 months pregnant with her first child. Catherine felt apprehension and hope weaving together inside her a deep desire to protect her unborn child from the whirlwind of Harrington power plays. They lived in a polished penthouse overlooking the Thames, with floor-to-ceiling glass that reflected the city's lights at night. It was a far cry from the modest suburban home Catherine grew up in, but she tried to adapt. Her father-in-law often offered patronizing praise about her upward mobility, as if every achievement in her life was purely due to the Harrington name. Unbeknownst to Catherine, Alexander's personal life was entwined with a young socialite named Serena Lee. Serena, daughter of a Hong Kong media magnate, was known for her striking beauty and relentless pursuit of status. She had made a splash on social media for her glamorous lifestyle, lavish vacations, overpriced couture, exclusive VIP parties. When she first met Alexander at a charity function, her instincts told her that this was a man she could mold. She recognized his hunger for admiration and seized upon it. They began a clandestine affair that quickly escalated from stolen kisses in dark corridors to extravagant getaways. To maintain secrecy, Alexander bought a discreet riverside apartment where they would meet. Their relationship was built on silent deals. Serena would stroke Alexander's ego, never questioning his insecurities, while he would cater to her appetites for luxury and glamour. Catherine had long suspected there was another woman. Late-night phone calls, unaccounted absences, and the vague cologne that didn't match Alexander's usual fragrance were the first signs. But whenever she confronted him, Alexander skillfully deflected her concerns with cold indignation or promises of a critical business meeting. Catherine tried telling herself it was stress at work. Yet, her intuition, once dismissed by the man she thought she knew, refused to silence itself. When word reached Catherine that her husband intended to host an extravagant dinner at Harrington Hall Hotel, a property once owned by her father-in-law, but recently renovated and reopened under Alexander's leadership. She assumed it was simply another PR endeavor. In truth, Alexander's motivation was more personal. With the new hotel, he hoped to make a grand statement of success. The dinner was an opportunity to showcase his achievements and invite influential investors, possibly to overshadow the looming presence of Gregory's demands that Alexander produce an heir who would carry on the Harrington lineage. Little did Catherine know that Serena would also be in attendance. It was the final bold step on Alexander's part to blend his public life with his private indulgences. She was his mistress, but he wanted her to taste the validation of being recognized at a Harrington event, if only subtly. For Serena, this dinner signified Alexander's commitment to her, a promise that she was more than just a hidden affair. As the date of the dinner approached, Catherine's suspicion grew sharper. Why did Alexander insist on such careful seating arrangements? Why was he nervously checking his phone every few minutes, only to lock it whenever she glanced over his shoulder? In the grand scheme of the Harrington Empire, elaborate parties were commonplace, but something about this one felt distinctly different. Behind the scenes, Catherine discovered a new wave of rumors swirling among the family staff that a high-profile guest was making special demands that contradicted Catherine's known preferences. Although the staff avoided giving Catherine direct answers, she couldn't ignore the gnawing sense of dread. Something was about to happen, and it wasn't just another business deal. She might have walked away, but her unborn child turned those thoughts of leaving into something terrifying. How could she stand alone against the Harrington power structure? The night before the dinner, Catherine found herself gazing at her reflection in the mirror, gently caressing her round belly. She whispered to the child inside, promising that she would protect them at all costs. She had no idea that the events about to unfold would force her to make a choice between her own self-worth and her child's future safety and shatter whatever illusions she still clung to about her husband's character. The grand reopening of the Harrington Hall Hotel was London's event of the season. The black granite facade gleamed under brilliant floodlights, a testament to the hotel's massive renovation budget. The Harrington name was emblazoned in glowing gold letters near the main entrance, and as guests began to arrive, uniformed staff ushered them into a sumptuous lobby adorned with fresh roses and an immense crystal chandelier. Catherine arrived in a sleek limousine provided by the Harrington family. Despite the swirl of opulence, a knot formed in her stomach. She wore a midnight blue gown that draped gracefully over her pregnant figure. Her stylist, personally chosen by Alexander, had suggested that the color would reflect elegance and quiet confidence. Yet Catherine felt exposed, sensing every stare from strangers and acquaintances alike. She plastered on a courteous smile, acknowledging congratulatory remarks on her pregnancy while ignoring hushed whispers behind polite smiles. For tonight, she was determined to maintain her composure, believing that the dignity of the Harrington name required it. Inside the ballroom, gilded arches and velvet drapes framed a scene of glittering champagne flutes and murmured chatter. The guest list featured politicians, celebrities, investors, and old-money aristocrats, many of whom Catherine barely knew. Gregory Harrington held court near the stage, casually talking with Lord Frampton, an influential figure from the House of Lords. Every so often, Gregory would glance at Catherine, his gaze cool and evaluative. She offered him a polite nod, trying to ignore his judgmental stare. She knew all too well that Gregory had never quite approved of her, considering her an outsider who lacked the aristocratic lineage he valued. Alexander was in his element. Weaving through the crowd like a seasoned politician, he exchanged handshakes and jokes with ease, sprinkling charming compliments whenever necessary. A proud grin laced his features whenever he spoke of the hotel's revival. At times, Catherine spotted Serena Lee across the room, her lithe figure draped in a crimson gown. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Serena's eyes shimmered like polished onyx, and she moved with the poise of a dancer. Guests gave her a second glance, trying to identify the mysterious woman. Catherine noticed Alexander's fleeting looks in Serena's direction, rife with unspoken promises. Anxiety clawed at Catherine's heart. As the evening progressed, the grand dinner was announced. Round tables clothed in white linen filled the dining hall, each set with elaborate centerpieces of peonies and orchids. Catherine took her seat next to Alexander at the main table, where Gregory was also seated. Moments later, Serena confidently approached and eased herself into a chair just across from Catherine, an unusual courtesy that raised more than a few eyebrows. Whispers rippled through the table. Some recognized her from society events, but no one was quite sure why she was placed at the center of the Harrington circle. Catherine tried to maintain composure, her hand drifting protectively to her belly. Despite the tension, dinner began with superficial politeness. Servers brought out the first course, a delicate scallop ceviche, accompanied by a champagne sorbet palate cleanser. Catherine took small, cautious bites, feeling her stomach churn more from dread than from pregnancy discomfort. Gregory broke the silence at the table with booming praise for Alexander, extolling his vision and success in reopening the hotel. Alexander, grateful for the compliment, boasted about the overwhelming demand for reservations and how the Harrington brand's expansion into hospitality was sure to earn them global recognition. All the while, Serena offered supportive smiles and subtle glances that were not lost on Catherine. Then came the moment Catherine had feared, a subtle change in the conversation's tone. Serena leaned forward, her voice dripping with admiration as she praised Alexander for his unwavering dedication and astounding generosity. The subtext was clear. She wanted people to know she was intimately aware of Alexander's personal qualities. Gregory arched an eyebrow, momentarily puzzled, but then resumed his measured smile. It was as though time slowed when Serena suddenly decided to address Catherine directly. She tilted her head in feigned concern, inquiring about Catherine's pregnancy. "How are you feeling, my dear? Pregnancy can be so exhausting, can't it?" Catherine cleared her throat. "I manage day by day. Thank you for your concern." The formal politeness felt forced. "I'm sure Alexander is taking good care of you," Serena continued, letting her hand rest lightly on Alexander's arm. "He's such a good provider." Across the table, the temperature seemed to drop. Gregory's polite expression turned wary, while Catherine's cheeks burned. She could taste the humiliation in the back of her throat. Alexander, however, merely gave a half smile and allowed the contact, as though wanting the tension to build. Someone near them initiated small talk about a new philanthropic initiative, momentarily diffusing the awkwardness. Yet Catherine's mind was spinning. Her gaze darted from Alexander's hand, which lingered near Serena's, to the faces of the surrounding guests, who were simultaneously curious and apprehensive. She could sense the forming scandal, and it made her dizzy. She wanted to leave, but she stayed, pinned by the weight of her unborn child and the knowledge that walking away from the Harrington empire was more complicated than simply pushing back from a dinner table. Suddenly, the next course arrived, roasted duck with balsamic reduction. Catherine glanced at the dish, feeling her stomach clench. She quietly whispered to a passing waiter, requesting water instead of wine. She was beginning to think she could endure the rest of the evening if she focused on her child's well-being, ignoring the blatant signals passing between Alexander and Serena. But deep in her soul, she knew the bubble of forced civility was about to burst. Nothing could have prepared her for the cruelty Alexander was about to inflict. As the main course was cleared away and a brief lull in the conversation arose, Alexander stood to address the room. He offered a generous toast to the success of Harrington Hall Hotel, proclaiming it a new era for the Harrington family. He thanked Gregory for his endless support, and the applause that followed was polite if not enthusiastic. Catherine forced a smile, praying that the evening would end without further conflict. She sensed her husband's restlessness. He was impatient to flaunt something or someone, and fear prickled in her veins. Seated across from Catherine, Serena fidgeted restlessly. The hush that fell over the ballroom when Alexander spoke was precisely what she craved. She wanted to be the center of that hush, that reverent attention. She stared at Catherine with undisguised contempt, as though Catherine's very existence was an affront to Serena's dreams of securing a place by Alexander's side. Catherine avoided the gaze, but she felt it like a searing brand. When dessert, a lavish chocolate soufflé, was served, Alexander gestured for the staff to dim the overhead lights, leaving only warm spotlights over the table. A hush settled among the guests, who sensed a dramatic shift in mood. Some of the staff hesitated, unsure if this was planned or a spontaneous decision. Gregory, still seated, observed his son with narrowed eyes, uncertain of what Alexander intended. With a microphone in hand, Alexander delivered a brief monologue about family values, about the importance of unity and legacy. Then he shocked everyone by introducing Serena Lee as a dear friend who had contributed immeasurably to the success of the hotel's reopening. Gregory's jaw tightened, Catherine's chest constricted. And Serena. She stood, gracefully inclining her head in mock humility, her crimson gown reflecting the spotlight as if she were on stage. Polite applause ensued, albeit confused. Catherine's thoughts raced. Why was Alexander publicly elevating Serena's status? Why risk the scandal of letting the world see his mistress under a spotlight? But the answers were plain to her now. Alexander's thirst for power had mutated into an obsession with controlling everything, including how his personal relationships were perceived. If he could make Serena's presence legitimate, then he would no longer have to hide her. He could have them both, his pregnant wife to secure the Harrington legacy, and a mistress to fulfill his lust for excitement and vanity. The final blow came when Alexander, with an air of practiced confidence, beckoned Catherine to stand. "My lovely wife," he began, "is pregnant with our first child. Tonight, I want to acknowledge her grace and strength through this journey." Catherine stood, a forced smile on her lips, uncertain whether to be relieved at the recognition or terrified at what might come next. Drawing the hush of the entire ballroom, Alexander continued, "She and Serena share a bond of admiration for the Harrington family, and I believe we should offer both of them our gratitude for supporting our endeavors." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gregory's face was a mask of fury. Some guests fidgeted nervously in their seats, unsure if they were witnessing a drunken gaffe or a carefully orchestrated humiliation. Serena pivoted toward Catherine, closing the distance with calculated steps. The tension at the table was suffocating. Catherine could barely breathe, her heart thundering in her ears. Then, in an act that defied all social norms, Serena raised her hand and slapped Catherine across the face. Hard, the sound reverberated in the stunned silence of the ballroom. Catherine staggered backward, her hand flying up to her cheek in disbelief. In that moment, chaos erupted. Several guests stood in protest, outraged by the violence they had just witnessed. Gregory slammed a fist onto the table, demanding an immediate explanation. Staff rushed forward, uncertain whether to intervene or wait for orders. Even as Catherine stood there, eyes welling with tears, her cheek stinging, her mind in shock, Alexander did the unthinkable. He took hold of Catherine's arm, not to comfort her but to keep her standing in place. His voice was low, menacing. "Apologize," he hissed, ensuring that only Catherine could hear the command. Though his grip alone signaled to onlookers, he was not on her side. It took Catherine a moment to register his words. She blinked, her vision blurring with tears. "What?" she stammered, disbelieving. "Apologize to Serena," Alexander repeated, louder this time, causing the crowd to stop in horrified curiosity. Her world spun. The magnitude of the betrayal stole her breath. She was carrying his child, and he wanted her to apologize to the mistress who had just assaulted her. She looked around the room, dozens of eyes locked on her. There was a moment of hope when she saw her father-in-law, Gregory, rise to his feet, as if ready to intervene. But to her shock, he paused. Was he considering the repercussions of a public family scandal? Fear of damaging the Harrington name, perhaps? Tears rolled down Catherine's cheeks, but she did not speak. A primal rage began to replace the humiliation. She might have remained silent if not for a single voice, quiet yet firm, speaking up from another table. It was Natalie Brown, an old friend of Catherine's from university. She had arrived at the dinner almost accidentally, invited by a mutual acquaintance. "This is insane, Alexander," Natalie said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "You can't treat her like this." That was all it took to break the tension. People began clamoring, some urging Catherine to sit, others demanding an explanation from Alexander. Yet Alexander would not release his grip on Catherine's arm. His eyes burned with a twisted anger, as though offended that the crowd was turning against him. Desperate to regain control, Alexander barked at the staff to turn the lights back on. The bright fluorescence flooded the room, revealing the tears on Catherine's face, the fury in Gregory's eyes, the smug pride in Serena's posture. Without thinking, Catherine wrenched herself free from Alexander's hold. She cradled her belly, trembling with shock and adrenaline. As the tumult escalated, Catherine fled from the table. A sea of onlookers parted for her, eyes filled with pity, confusion, or condemnation. Her entire world felt as though it were cracking apart. She couldn't grasp that the father of her unborn child had let another woman strike her, then demanded that she apologize. It was as if all those nights she spent doubting his loyalty, all those fleeting hopes that he would be the man she once loved, had been violently ripped away in a single, brutal moment. Catherine fled to the hotel's powder room, tears burning her eyes. Her heart pounded so violently she feared for her child's safety. Splashes of water on her cheeks did little to soothe the sting of Serena's slap or the deeper ache of betrayal. Yet even as she trembled, the baby moved inside her, a gentle reminder of why she needed to remain strong. Outside, the ballroom was in chaos. Alexander's personal assistant frantically tried to manage guests' outrage, offering excuses that this was a family misunderstanding. Gregory, furious but not wanting a larger public scandal, demanded Alexander accompany him to a private conference room. Serena lingered, as if hoping for an invitation to follow, but none was forthcoming. She feigned a hurt expression, crossing her arms defensively, eventually retreating into the shadows. People parted in the hallway, stepping aside for Gregory and Alexander. Through hushed exchanges, bits of the confrontation leaked. Gregory was reprimanding his son for orchestrating a catastrophic fiasco that could irreversibly damage the Harrington reputation. In the powder room, Catherine steadied herself against the marble sink. Natalie Brown, who had bravely spoken up, entered, gently placing a hand on Catherine's shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft yet urgent. Catherine let out a shaky breath. "I don't know. I don't know who he is anymore. And with the baby coming..." She broke off, tears threatening to spill again. Natalie rummaged in her purse and pulled out a tissue, dabbing at Catherine's cheek. "You don't deserve this. I can't believe he did that in front of everyone." The door swung open again, revealing another concerned face, Thomas Morgan, a longtime family friend who also served as Catherine's personal legal advisor. He wasn't just any attorney, he specialized in estate matters for wealthy families, and he'd known Catherine's family before her marriage to Alexander. Thomas paused, clearly uncertain if his presence was welcome. "Catherine," he began, his voice solemn, "I can't begin to express how sorry I am for what happened. I was across the room when Serena hit you. By the time I got close, you'd already run off. She mustered a sad smile. "Thomas, you've always been fair. I know you probably have to consider your duties to the Harringtons." He shook his head. "Right now, my duty is to make sure you and your child are safe. The Harrington name won't mean anything if something happens to you." Catherine's tears finally subsided enough for her to think clearly. The faint hum of her anger kept her from collapsing into despair. "Alexander wants me to apologize to his mistress," she said, her voice shaking. "He's gone too far." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "You have every right to walk out of here and never look back, Catherine. You could file assault charges against Serena. She hit you. There are at least 50 witnesses." She nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "But do I really want to draw the entire Harrington empire into a legal battle?" She hesitated, fear gripping her. "I need to protect my baby. If I walk away right now, how do I secure a future for my child without them controlling everything?" Natalie interjected. "You're strong enough to raise this child alone, if it comes to that. You have your own inheritance, your own family. You don't need them." Thomas placed a hand gently on Catherine's arm. "Ultimately, it's your choice, but do not let them bully you into apologizing. That's absurd. We can figure out the legal aspects later. Your immediate safety is paramount." Before Catherine could respond, another staff member entered the powder room timidly, apologizing profusely for the intrusion. "Mrs. Harrington, Mr. Harrington requests your presence in the private lounge upstairs." She swallowed hard. He said, "It's urgent." A storm of conflicting emotions raged within Catherine: fear, anger, the slightest flicker of relief that Alexander might want to rectify this nightmare. Yet experience warned her that Alexander rarely sought reconciliation on anyone else's terms. Still, she was carrying his child, and if there was any sliver of hope that he might show remorse, she needed to find out. Natalie and Thomas insisted on accompanying Catherine. As they ascended a plush spiral staircase toward a secluded lounge, the guests below were still buzzing with chatter about the shocking slap. The Harrington staff did their best to calm the gossip, but phones were already out, capturing the aftermath on social media. The name Alexander Harrington would soon be splashed across every gossip website and tabloid. At the top of the stairs, they arrived at a heavy mahogany door guarded by 2 security personnel. One stepped aside, opening the door to reveal an intimate lounge area with leather chairs arranged around a fireplace. Gregory stood off to the side, arms crossed, brow furrowed. Alexander paced near the fireplace, running a hand through his hair in frustration. As Catherine, Natalie, and Thomas entered, Gregory gestured for the staff to close the door, leaving them in tense privacy. Alexander spoke first, his voice taut. "Catherine, I'm so sorry about the scene. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." She swallowed, fighting to maintain a steady tone. "But you let it happen. You let your mistress slap me. You demanded that I apologize to her. That goes beyond just a scene, Alexander. That's cruelty." Alexander's eyes flickered with annoyance, as if her words were an imposition on his carefully crafted narrative. "Things got out of hand. Serena was jealous. She thought you were trying to undermine her presence. She's your mistress, Alexander," Catherine said, her voice quavering in anger. "I'm your wife, pregnant with your child. The only person undermined here is me and our baby." Gregory intervened, his tone harsh. "This fiasco is catastrophic for the Harrington name. Alexander, you should have handled this discreetly. If I had known you planned to bring that woman here, I would have put a stop to it immediately." He then shifted his gaze to Catherine. "Nevertheless, Catherine, we have to control the fallout. As humiliating as it is, a public confrontation could ruin our family reputation. We need to figure out how to manage this crisis." Catherine felt her blood run cold. Neither father nor son offered any genuine compassion for her suffering. They were only concerned with optics. Anger flared in her eyes. "So, you want me to take the blame? To apologize to her for your precious reputation?" Alexander stiffened. "I'm only asking you to make a statement that this was a misunderstanding. You don't have to directly apologize if that's the sticking point, but the press will jump on this. Our business deals could tank if we don't present a united front." Thomas stepped in. "Mr. Harrington, you can't seriously expect Catherine to do that. She's the victim here, not the aggressor. Any statement she makes should reflect the truth that she was assaulted." Gregory's expression darkened. "Watch your tone, Thomas. You work for this family. And might I remind you, if Catherine truly cared about the Harrington name, she'd want to minimize scandal. We can't have the mother of our future heir embroiled in a public spectacle." A bitter laugh escaped Catherine. "The first C. I'm only valuable as the mother of your heir. My dignity, my well-being, it means nothing to you. Well, I have my own life, my own child to protect. I'm done letting you people treat me like a decorative object." Alexander opened his mouth to protest, but Catherine raised her hand, silencing him. "I won't apologize to Serena. I won't let you or anyone else twist this into a minor misunderstanding. If you want to salvage your reputation, start by acknowledging what you did was morally reprehensible." His eyes flashed with anger at her defiance. Gregory also bristled, but he said nothing. He seemed torn, caught between berating his son and controlling the damage. Catherine turned on her heel, heading for the door. She paused only to look back at Alexander, her once loving husband, and say, "The child I'm carrying deserves better than this. If you want to be a father, show me you can be a decent human being first." With that, she left the lounge, flanked by Natalie and Thomas. Her mind raced with questions about what her next move would be. She had defied them in a way she never thought possible, and although fear still coursed through her veins, a flicker of resolve lit up in her chest. The storm was far from over, but she was determined she would not cower under the Harrington name anymore. Catherine returned to the penthouse that night, escorted by Natalie and Thomas. The car ride was tense and silent, punctured only by Catherine's shaky breaths. When they arrived, the doorman, usually brimming with polite greetings, was subdued, as though word had already reached him about the scandal at Harrington Hall Hotel. Inside, the penthouse felt colder, emptier. Catherine retreated to the master bedroom, away from the prying eyes of the household staff. Natalie gently helped Catherine out of her evening gown, revealing the reddened imprint on her cheek. A mixture of compassion and anger flashed in Natalie's eyes. "Does it still hurt?" "A bit," Catherine admitted, her voice hoarse from crying, "but not as much as everything else." Thomas waited in the living room, pacing near the panoramic windows that overlooked the Thames. Once Catherine had changed into more comfortable clothes, a loose-fitting dress to accommodate her pregnant belly, she returned to find Thomas rummaging through a folder of legal documents. He looked up, his brow furrowed. "Catherine, we need to talk about your options," he said, motioning for her to sit. "Alexander and Gregory will try to control the narrative. If you want to protect yourself and your baby, you need to be prepared." Catherine nodded, her hands pressed protectively over her belly. "I'm listening." Thomas outlined a few potential strategies. One involved filing assault charges against Serena, leveraging the witness accounts. Another was seeking a restraining order if Catherine felt threatened. He also mentioned the possibility of a separation or even divorce proceedings, though he admitted going up against the Harrington legal team wouldn't be easy. The Harringtons had a history of lengthy, expensive litigation designed to wear down opponents. "The child complicates things," Thomas explained gently. "You have the right to secure child support and partial custody. However, the Harrington family name might try to push for full or majority custody if you separate from Alexander." They'll claim the child belongs in the Harrington dynasty. It's archaic, but they have immense resources. Catherine's eyes glistened with fresh tears, though she forced them back. I can't let them take my child, her voice trembled. Is there a way to guarantee they won't be able to do that? Thomas chose his words carefully. You can't guarantee it, but you can fight it. You have your own inheritance and a potential network of supporters. The assault witnessed tonight could help your case, especially if Alexander publicly sided with the aggressor. Natalie placed a reassuring hand on Catherine's shoulder. You don't have to do this alone. I'll help in any way I can. And Thomas will too. A sense of resolve mixed with weariness filled Catherine. I want to ensure my baby has a secure, loving home. If Alexander can't give that, then I'll do it on my own. Thomas handed Catherine a few documents to review. They were preliminary steps, a record of the assault, a letter of her intent to separate, and some financial documents he had procured that detailed the accounts Catherine had access to. At first, the text blurred in front of her eyes, her mind still reeling from the night's events. Eventually, she signed the preliminary statements, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. It wasn't a formal divorce filing yet, but it was the first step in drawing a boundary between her and the Harrington family's toxic influence. The hours crept toward dawn, and Natalie urged Catherine to get some rest. Exhausted, Catherine retreated to the bedroom. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the city glowed under distant stars, oblivious to the storm raging in her life. She tried to connect with the gentle movements of her baby, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. A swirl of half-formed questions crowded her thoughts. What would tomorrow bring? Would Alexander escalate his manipulations? Would Gregory unleash the family's formidable legal arsenal? And perhaps the most painful question of all, had Alexander ever truly loved her, or was she just a convenient pawn in his drive for status? Eventually, Catherine fell into a restless sleep. She dreamed of a small child standing on a lonely stretch of beach, staring out at a tumultuous sea. The sky was dark, the clouds swirling with ominous intensity. She called out to the child, but her voice was swallowed by the roar of the waves. Then she jolted awake, heart pounding. It was morning. Downstairs, she discovered the house staff had prepared breakfast. Though her stomach churned, she forced down a few bites of toast for the baby's sake. Natalie and Thomas had left to gather more resources. Meanwhile, the penthouse was eerily quiet, as if the building itself was waiting for the next blow. Mid-morning brought it in the form of a phone call from Gregory Harrington. Catherine stared at the phone's caller ID, debating whether to ignore it. Finally, she answered. "Catherine," Gregory began, his tone measured, "I want to discuss last night's unfortunate incident." She stayed silent, letting him talk. "Alexander has stepped out of line, I admit. But the worst thing you could do now is involve the authorities or the press. We have a press release prepared. We'll say that Serena Lee was temporarily overwhelmed by stress, and you were simply caught in the middle. We'll frame it as a minor altercation that was blown out of proportion. The sooner we bury this, the better for everyone." Catherine swallowed her anger. "I suppose, in your version of the story, I don't get slapped and told to apologize." Gregory cleared his throat. "We can't have the Harrington family name tarnished by public scandal. My suggestion is you play your part and be the gracious wife. In return, the family is willing to invest significantly in your philanthropic interests. Once you've had the baby, we'll ensure you have a comfortable position in society. No more secrets. Serena will be discreet, or so Alexander promises." A wave of disbelief crashed over her. "You're bargaining with me, trying to buy my silence." His tone became colder. "I'm offering you a way to preserve your dignity, Catherine. Don't underestimate the damage we can do if you oppose us. Think carefully before refusing." The Harrington name carries weight in every major institution in this city and beyond. She shut her eyes, breathing through the heartbreak. This was the Harrington Empire at its rawest, an unyielding fortress that sought to crush anyone who threatened its facade. She found her voice, forging it with the anger she'd been suppressing. "I don't accept your offer. I will not stand by while you and your son degrade me. My child deserves better than a father who values his mistress more than his wife, or a grandfather who sees us as PR liabilities." Gregory's exhale was long and heavy. "You're making a mistake, Catherine. Goodbye, Mr. Harrington," she said, and hung up. As she set the phone down, her hand shook. She felt the reverberations of slamming a door shut on one life, uncertain what lay beyond. But a newfound determination stirred within her. If the Harringtons wanted a fight, she was finally ready to give it to them. The morning after the shocking dinner, news of Catherine's ordeal spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with grainy videos of Serena slapping a visibly pregnant Catherine, followed by Alexander's chilling demand for her to apologize. Hashtags like #HarringtonScandal and #PregnantWifeAbuse began trending, turning the once revered millionaire into a public villain overnight. Tabloids fed the frenzy with lurid headlines: "Millionaire lets mistress attack expectant wife," while online forums dissected every second of the now viral footage. Though stunned by the sudden spotlight, Catherine found unexpected support. Concerned strangers flooded her inbox with messages of solidarity, urging her to stand up against Alexander and the Harrington Empire. Amid the chaos, Gregory Harrington and his PR team scrambled to contain the fallout. They released a statement calling the incident a miscommunication, but Catherine refused to remain silent. Together with her friend Natalie, she sought legal help from Thomas and a specialized women's rights lawyer, Amanda Townsend. They prepared the groundwork for a formal separation, emphasizing Alexander's emotional abuse and negligence, and requesting protection for Catherine and her unborn child. Alexander, meanwhile, withdrew from public view. Torn between protecting his reputation and appeasing his mistress, he oscillated between hollow apologies and veiled threats through text messages and phone calls. Catherine blocked his number for her own sanity, determined to focus on her baby's well-being. She temporarily stayed with Natalie for safety, dreading any attempt by the Harringtons to manipulate her into compliance. Although rumors circulated about her unstable state or alleged gold-digging motives, she remained resolute. Each new tabloid story only solidified her decision. She would not be intimidated into returning to a life of humiliation. By the end of the week, Catherine was poised for a legal showdown. She might have been up against one of London's most influential families, but she had gathered enough courage and enough allies to challenge the Harringtons' stranglehold on her future. The weeks that followed were a tangle of legal paperwork, press speculation, and emotional upheaval. Catherine officially filed for separation, requesting a substantial restraining order to keep Serena Lee away from her. In the aftermath of the scandalous dinner, new revelations dripped into the media, rumors of Alexander's past infidelities, glimpses into his extravagant spending on Serena, and insider accounts of how Gregory Harrington manipulated family members for the sake of the Harrington brand. Alexander's PR team tried to shield him from the worst blows, but social media was relentless. The once admired millionaire was now lambasted as a heartless husband who let his pregnant wife be assaulted. Sponsors pulled out of his upcoming ventures. Stock prices in Harrington Global Holdings wobbled, reflecting public distrust. Gregory Harrington seethed at the negative fallout. He pressured Alexander to fix the situation, even hinting that Alexander's shares in the company could be jeopardized if he failed. Through it all, Catherine stayed at Natalie's cozy apartment, leaning on her friend's unwavering support. She continued attending medical checkups, ensuring her baby remained healthy. Thomas and Amanda worked tirelessly to keep Catherine's legal position strong. They managed to secure a hearing date to finalize a formal custody and property arrangement. One brisk morning, Catherine opened her email to find a message from a local women's advocacy group, Women Rising. They offered to publicly support her case, praising her courage in standing against both spousal and emotional abuse. They wanted to arrange a discreet meeting to discuss how Catherine's story could help other women in similar situations. For a moment, she hesitated. Her life was already under so much scrutiny. But then she thought of other women trapped in oppressive marriages, afraid to speak out. If her ordeal could shine a spotlight on that issue, perhaps some good could come from her pain. She agreed to meet with the group's spokesperson, a poised and empathetic woman named Rachel Bloom. They arranged a quiet luncheon in a private setting. Over sandwiches and tea, Rachel listened intently to Catherine's story, occasionally jotting notes, but mostly offering empathy and encouragement. "Your situation is sadly not unique among wealthy circles," Rachel explained. "Money often amplifies control issues. The Harrington name might be powerful, but you're not the first person who stood up to a family empire." Catherine mustered a small smile. "Sometimes it feels like I'm the only one going through this. I worry about my child's future." Rachel reached across the table, giving Catherine's hand a gentle squeeze. "By coming forward, you're helping many who feel silenced by their abusers. We can start a fund to provide legal support for women in similarly precarious positions. If you're open to it, we can release a joint statement emphasizing that domestic abuse, emotional or physical, should not be tolerated no matter how wealthy or influential the family." Catherine pondered the proposal. The idea of using her story to enact real change stirred a sense of purpose within her. Yet she also feared that aligning too publicly with a women's advocacy group might provoke the Harringtons to retaliate. As if reading her mind, Rachel added, "We'll respect your boundaries. You choose how public you want to be. The main point is to show their solidarity, that you're not alone, and that powerful bullies can be challenged." Moved by the kindness and solidarity, Catherine agreed to collaborate, at least in a limited capacity. She left the luncheon feeling a renewed sense of agency. She wasn't just a victim. She had a voice, and she could wield it to protect herself and potentially others. That evening, Catherine updated Natalie, Thomas, and Amanda about her meeting with Women Rising. While Thomas cautioned that going public might provoke Alexander or Gregory to intensify their legal games, Amanda believed it could be a strategic advantage. Public support can work wonders, especially in high-profile custody cases. She pointed out that the Harringtons fear bad press more than anything. As the hearing date approached, Catherine braced herself. She still had nightmares, flashbacks of the dinner, the echo of Serena's slap, and Alexander's demand for her to apologize. But each day, she grew more resolute. She would not be cowed by those memories, nor would she let them define her. She practiced mindfulness techniques recommended by her therapist to keep anxiety at bay for the sake of her growing baby. Sometimes she even felt small moments of joy as she contemplated the love she could give this child, untainted by Harrington manipulations. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. The case was scheduled at a private family court known for handling sensitive, high-profile disputes. A small group of reporters waited outside the courthouse, eager for a glimpse of Catherine. She wore a simple yet elegant navy maternity dress, her round belly now unmistakable. Thomas walked beside her, shielding her from cameras. Natalie squeezed her hand in support before Catherine entered the courthouse. Inside, Amanda guided her to a waiting area, where they would speak with the judge in chambers. Alexander and Gregory arrived minutes later. Alexander looked tense, his once confident swagger diminished. Gregory appeared downright grim. Catherine could feel the charged energy in the air. This was the showdown that would determine her baby's future. Inside the judge's chambers, the tension was palpable. Judge Alistair Brandt, known for his integrity, wasted no time. He acknowledged the high-profile nature of the case and reminded everyone of the confidentiality of the proceedings. Amanda presented Catherine's claims: emotional abuse, negligence, the threatening behavior from Gregory, and the assault by Serena. She emphasized that Catherine needed security for herself and her unborn child, requesting sole custody upon the child's birth until a safer arrangement could be established. Gregory's team attempted to argue that the incident at Harrington Hall was overblown, that Catherine was weaponizing a minor altercation. They insisted the Harrington name would provide the child with unparalleled opportunities. They also hinted that Catherine was exploiting the situation for financial gain. Catherine's cheeks flushed in anger, but she kept her composure. Judge Brandt listened carefully, occasionally asking pointed questions. "Mr. Harrington," he said at one juncture, addressing Alexander directly, "is it true you demanded your wife apologize to Miss Lee after Miss Lee struck her?" Alexander fumbled for words. "One, I was trying to de-escalate. It was never about forcing Catherine to apologize. The situation was chaotic. The judge's gaze was unwavering. A pregnant woman was struck. The chaos was inflicted upon her. That's hardly a justification." After hours of arguments, testimonies, and cross-examinations, the judge concluded the session. Catherine could barely breathe as she awaited his decision. With a calm yet firm tone, Judge Brandt stated, "Based on the evidence and witness statements, I'm granting Mistress Harrington's request for an interim protective order. There will be no direct contact from Miss Lee to Mistress Harrington, and Mr. Harrington will have limited supervised visitation rights after the baby is born pending psychological evaluations. The final custody and separation terms will be set at a later hearing, but this arrangement will remain in place until then." A surge of relief flooded Catherine. Alexander slumped slightly, looking defeated. Gregory clenched his jaw, fury evident but contained under the watchful eye of the judge. The Harrington legal team conferred among themselves, likely planning an appeal. But for now, Catherine had a measure of protection. As she left the courtroom, Catherine felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She wasn't naive. She knew the battle wasn't fully won. There would be more negotiations, more attempts by the Harringtons to undermine her. But for the first time since that disastrous dinner, she felt genuinely hopeful. She had taken a stand, not just for herself, but for her unborn child's right to grow up without the crushing influence of a toxic empire. In the subsequent months, Catherine's pregnancy advanced steadily. Each ultrasound and doctor's appointment brought her closer to the reality of becoming a mother. She found solace in designing a small nursery in Natalie's spare room, filling it with soft toys, neutral-colored blankets, and simple decorations. She used the moment to reclaim joy, focusing on the life she was bringing into the world rather than the ongoing legal strife. Alexander complied, albeit grudgingly, with the court's interim protective order. He reached out through lawyers, occasionally expressing a desire to attend birthing classes or visit a prenatal session, but Catherine kept her distance. She agreed to let him observe an ultrasound appointment once, under supervision, but the emotional tension was too high. She wanted peace, and each contact with him reopened wounds that hadn't fully healed. Gregory, furious at the Harrington name's tarnishing, tried various strategies behind the scenes. He spoke to Catherine's relatives and longtime acquaintances, trying to pressure them to counsel her into reconciling. When that failed, he used the Harrington corporate channels to spread rumors that Catherine was mentally unstable, insinuating postpartum depression in advance, hoping to cast doubt on her parenting capabilities. But Catherine had built enough evidence, witness statements, supportive expert opinions, that these ploys did little to sway the court. Meanwhile, Catherine's collaboration with Women Rising gained momentum. She participated in a discreet roundtable discussion about emotional and psychological abuse in high society families, sharing her experience without divulging sensitive details of her ongoing case. Her story resonated with others who had suffered in silence, and the organization saw a surge in donations. For Catherine, it was a healing process. Each time she spoke out, she reclaimed a piece of her power. As her due date approached, Catherine decided to move into a modest two-bedroom flat that she had purchased years ago before her marriage. It was outside the city centre, away from the penthouse's relentless reminders of Harrington dominance. Thomas arranged for security measures, a reliable alarm system, a simple gate just to keep unwelcome visitors at bay. Surrounded by supportive friends and her own independence, Catherine felt calmer than she had in a long time. Finally, the day came. Late one evening, as a summer rain pattered against the windows, Catherine felt the first contractions. She was alone in her small living room, watching a documentary to distract herself from the swirl of thoughts about the impending birth. When the pain intensified, she called Natalie, who rushed over immediately. By the time they arrived at the hospital, Catherine's contractions were a few minutes apart. Nurses whisked her into a labor ward, hooking her up to monitors. Thomas arrived soon after, eager to support her in any way he could, even if it was just pacing the hallway and handling administrative details. Throughout the night, Catherine labored, clutching Natalie's hand, breathing through the waves of pain. Every contraction reminded her of why she had fought so hard to give this child a chance at a life free from oppression. After hours of exertion, the baby's cries finally pierced the air. With tears of overwhelming relief, Catherine held her newborn daughter, who squirmed and wailed, tiny fists shaking at the newness of the world. She named her Aurora, inspired by the idea of a dawn breaking after a long, dark night. Aurora Harrington was small but strong, her dark eyes already inquisitive. The nurses cooed over her, and Natalie snapped a few photos that captured Catherine's exhausted yet radiant smile. Word reached Alexander, who had insisted on updates through the hospital staff. Whether out of genuine parental concern or Harrington family pressure, he arrived at the hospital early the next morning, accompanied by a neutral mediator from the court. Catherine agreed to let him see Aurora briefly, on the condition that she had final say in the timing and duration of the visit. In the soft light of the hospital room, Alexander approached the bassinet. Aurora lay sleeping, swaddled in a pale yellow blanket. Catherine's heart clenched with conflicting emotions. This was Aurora's father, the man she had once loved, who had betrayed her in front of the world. Would he ever truly change? Could he be a decent father, despite his flaws? He peered down at the infant, his expression raw and unguarded. For a moment, Catherine glimpsed genuine awe in his eyes, a quiet softness she hadn't seen in a long time. He didn't speak, perhaps fearing any words would be inadequate. Carefully, under the watchful gaze of the mediator, he reached out to touch Aurora's tiny hand. The baby shifted in her swaddle, her fingers reflexively curling around one of his. Catherine observed the moment, heart pounding. She wanted to protect Aurora fiercely, yet she recognized that this child had a father, flawed as he was. Part of her prayed that fatherhood might spark a transformation in Alexander, but her experience warned her to remain cautious. After a few minutes, Alexander cleared his throat. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "She looks like you." Catherine nodded, tears forming. "I'm not sure whose nose she has yet," she said, trying to lighten the moment, but her voice came out shaky. She pulled Aurora closer to her, mindful of how vulnerable this newborn was. The mediator gently gestured toward the corridor, indicating Alexander's visitation was nearing its limit under the court order. Alexander lingered for a heartbeat longer, then withdrew. "I hope one day I can prove I'm not the monster people think I am," he murmured, casting a wistful glance at Aurora before stepping out. Catherine exhaled, relief mingling with sorrow. She gazed down at her daughter. Whatever the future held, shared custody, further legal battles, or a measured co-parenting arrangement, she knew she had made the right choice in standing up for herself. Aurora deserved a mother who refused to be silenced. She vowed never to let her child grow up believing that love was synonymous with control or abuse. In the days that followed, Catherine basked in the haze of new motherhood, focusing on feeding, changing, and learning to decode Aurora's cries. Friends dropped by with flowers and congratulatory notes. Women Rising sent a care package filled with baby essentials. Online, public sympathy favored Catherine, celebrating her bravery and new journey as a single mother. The Harrington clan remained distant, entangled in damage control efforts. At last, Catherine left the hospital, cradling Aurora in her arms. She stepped into a taxi that would take them to their modest flat, far from the gilded cage of the Harrington penthouse. A fresh breeze rushed in as the car gained speed, and Catherine felt something akin to hope blossoming within her chest. She leaned down to kiss Aurora's forehead, whispering softly, "We're free now, my love. The rest of our story is ours to write." Catherine's journey from a silenced wife to a determined mother has only just begun, yet she has already reclaimed her dignity and shaped a safer future for her child. While echoes of the Harrington name and its vast influence linger, Catherine's unwavering courage and a community of supporters have proven stronger than the forces trying to keep her bound. She refused to accept a life of cruelty, even when it meant turning away from luxury and facing the daunting power of one of London's most formidable families. To follow Catherine's story is to witness a woman shatter the illusion of obedience, stand up to betrayal, and become a fierce protector of her child's innocence. If this story resonates with you, please show your support. Like this video, share it with those who might need to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more compelling real-life drama. Your voice matters. Let's use it.